I have someone amazing on the show today, Dr. Halima Begum, who of course has joined us today from of course her many travels, and now she's here and she's made time for us, and I really want to discuss her career today because it's extraordinary. It's something out of the ordinary, and of course I don't even think 10 minutes today will be enough to speak about her career today. So let's move on to speaking to Dr. Halima Begum. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. How are you today, just generally?
I'm very well, but I'm getting quite nervous because I don't want to get in the way of a conversation and a dialogue between a father and a daughter, because that is a very special bond.
It is. But of course, I think with Baba, he wants me to focus on, what it is that I want to do. Of course, I've studied law. I want to be a barrister, but at the same time thinking, is it still the right career? You change your mind every now and then with the climate that's going on, what's relevant, what's good for me in the future? So of course, now I understand you've studied international relations, you've then gone on to do your PhD and so on. Have you made those decisions from a young age?
Wow. A bit like you, really, thinking very openly about what's interesting, what's relevant, not feeling fixed one way or another. I mean, the only thing fixed about my early career choices was, I think, the need to see the world. Like, I grew up in Brick Lane and I love Brick Lane.
Yes.
But I wanted to spread my wings. So the only thing fixed in my career ambition was to see the world. But other than that, it was just being open to all the different possibilities of study that was available to me at the time. And wanting to use my studies as a way out to see the world. So really it was curiosity, maybe?
Curiosity, yes.
Joy, wanting to see more of the world. And that was enough to really keep driving me along that journey. When I did make the choice to study international relations, that was actually a master's degree at the LSE. So I studied, I think, at the time with Professor Fred Halliday, and I'm sure it was because he was teaching that course. He's passed away now, but he was one of the world's leading experts in the Middle East at the time, and also a theorist on international relations. So who better to study with if you were going to study IR?
Of course. So then, from your experiences, now I understand you've worked with the Department for International Development. What experiences helped you to go into that career path? You've studied international relations, then how do you find the experience to work towards those, sorts of careers within that field?
So the Department for International Development is now called the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office.
Okay, yes.
So it's changed its name. So previously the Department for International Development used to be separated out from the diplomatic arm. Now they're amalgamated. And they are competitive to get into. So you have to be fairly organised in terms of how you embark on that career. Of course, I wasn't actually that organised, I have to say. But I did have a curiosity for the world and an understanding to see the world and maybe think a little bit about how I could make some changes in the world. So I think I said I grew up in Brick Lane, and it was a very difficult time in the 80s growing up in Brick Lane for the British Bangladeshi community in general. So growing up in that context, you learn a lot around politics. It wasn't international politics, but nevertheless politics.
Politics in general,
Yeah, how you negotiate settlement, how you negotiate better housing rights, how you negotiate not having racists on the door. This was my upbringing and childhood, best education I ever received. So by the time I went to the LSE, I think I was kind of informed enough to know that change happens from within, not outside. Definitely. But nevertheless, you probably need a very good degree. But still, penetrating places like the Foreign and Commonwealth Office or DFID at the time, it felt a little bit kind of opaque, like you're not quite sure how you navigate. So I tried the indirect route, which was to work in a number of think tanks, and then an INGO, and then through the INGO, I applied through a professional scheme to get experts into the Department for International Development. Right. So I came to the Department of International Development as an education expert.
Okay, so you've tried different experiences to try and get into that. Now, that being said, of course, you've spoken about making that change to the world. And of course, with the identity that we had in the 80s as Bangladeshis, how did you use that to, of course, penetrate into that sort of field? Would you say that played a part?
I think it played 100% a part, right? Because international development is all about how you help create a change
Yes.
in different parts of the world. And obviously, my heritage is from Bangladesh.
Yes.
Back in those days, Bangladesh was quite a big part of an international aid portfolio.
Yes.
So whereas you had, white middle class young people going to the University of Sussex, taking a gap year, learning about Bangladesh, very long-winded way of getting to understand development.
Yes.
I probably had it in my roots and my blood, right? Because I actually understood something about the power of why British Bangladeshis were thinking about sending remittance back to Bangladesh.
Of course, yes.
Because actually we needed remittance in order to drive the economy back in Bangladesh, so that the economy of Bangladesh, it's developing and we're not really dependent on aid.
Yes.
So I think 100% my upbringing, my heritage as a British Bangladeshi made me confident and resilient and gave me, I guess, a chance to speak very confidently about what it is that I wanted out of my career, which perhaps had I grown in the suburbs of Sussex or the suburbs of Winchester, I might not have had that same kind of springboard, really.
No, of course. And that being said, did you face any obstacles? Because, of course, we're going from in an era where there weren't that many Bangladeshis in that field. Did you have a mentor? How did you tackle those sorts of obstacles without, those things?
I mean, I won't lie, it was quite hard, but for different reasons. So for example, a lot of people have stereotypes about British Bangladeshi women, shall I say. They educate themselves to a certain extent and then they think about getting married. Okay, so those sorts of stereotypes don't help because those stereotypes are not applied to women from other communities, really. Because
of course, yes.
I think women from all communities are probably very similar in their aspirations. They want to have family, they want a career, sometimes they want to break. I mean, I don't think we should stereotype, but for British Bangladeshi women, I think a lot of careers advisors and people in so-called professional roles probably had quite stereotypical notions of what Bangladeshi women did. And I faced a fair amount of that. Didn't listen to any of that, of course, because as I said, I had a lot of curiosity. Didn't listen to the career professionals, sort of listened to my parents a bit, who shared, I think, a desire for us to do really well in life, but probably were less sure about how you did it. And they gave me a lot of love, confidence, and that was enough, really, to navigate through that complexity. But the stereotypes were quite difficult because when you're 18 and 19 and 21, I didn't sound like this, so I'd be very shy. My parents couldn't really bat in the same way that I can for my nieces right now. So that was hard. But I think always I remembered that, well, everybody was young once and, maybe I don't speak a certain way. It doesn't mean my ideas aren't as valuable or as valid. So I think it's just knowing that we each have a kind of very valuable role to play in society that kept propelling me to overcome those stereotypes. I never had serious arguments with people about those stereotypes. Actually, I must say, so my way of navigating life in general and the barriers, it isn't to kind of hit it full on and have a very angry argument about it, although sometimes that might be helpful. It was really to kind of navigate away, find other ways to kind of get around, because it's so energy draining to lock into arguments with people that might have stereotypes, right? So, and my energy isn't very well served there. So I would always work with people that wanted to open doors for me.
And so when you would navigate into those sorts of doors, did you find that it was more welcoming? Did you find that even then there were still barriers there, or did you just go about, go opening if one door closed, another door would open, that sort of style?
Yeah, it's a bit like that. Sometimes you make mistakes as well.
Yes.
I mean, the one thing I wouldn't really wish on my younger self is pressure. Pressure around academic success, pressure around finding the great job, or pressure around finding the great partner or the husband. That sort of pressure, I think these days could be incredibly harmful for young people.
Yes,
I think we need to surround people like you with love and resilience and let you explore the best possible ways. So yeah, if a door did shut, I mean, I was always told that, it doesn't really matter how many times you fall. What matters is how many times you get up again. Like Muhammad Ali is actually one of my favourite role models, and the way in which he danced with his world, his sport, his career.
Yes.
And it always is a dance. and managing to dance in a different way, but knowing that at some point you'll probably come to a crescendo anyway.
Oh, of course. And that being said, of course, if you could do anything differently with what you've done so far in your career, would there be anything different, or would you still keep to what you've done today?
I wanted to be a journalist actually when I was 18 and 21, and it was hard then to try journalism because you had to do a postgraduate course in journalism in Cardiff.
Right.
I lived in Brick Lane. It was quite hard to then kind of relocate.
Go back and forth, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a very competitive course to get into, and back then that was the only way to get into journalism.
Right.
So if I could do it again, would I be a journalist? Possibly, because I think one of the most powerful ways in which we could make a change in the world is by writing about the sort of changes that you don't normally see. So yes, if I could change things, I'd probably try that again. But it's still about making a change in the world. That profession was about using the pen. I'm using a different route to making a change. But that probably is a regret, yes.
No, of course, and I mean, I've gone through your extensive CV, and I know you're making change because I understand you'll soon be the new chief executive for Oxfam. So how do you find that? How are you dealing with the news?
Oh, thank you, Freya.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm still in a daze, actually. In a daze because, Oxfam is the brand that everybody,
it is, yes.
You and I know, right?
I used to volunteer for it once upon a time when I was much younger, and of course now to know that I'm sitting with the chief executive, of course, for me it's very exciting. So tell me, how do you feel? Because it comes with a lot of responsibilities, and to be tackling that, and of course again you have your other workload, your previous workload, so to be able to go from one role to another, it must be challenging.
Yeah. So, by the way, I'm so pleased to hear that you volunteered for Oxfam. that is awesome. I'm just really chuffed to hear that. I feel quite dazed. I'm excited. I'm really excited that actually not so much that it's me, but the role is going to somebody from the British Bangladeshi community.
That for us is a proud moment, of course.
Right. That is really exciting. That's one of the reasons why I actually accepted the role. I'm quite new in my current role as well with ActionAid UK, equally delighted with that role, of course. So I wasn't really looking for a change that soon, but who says no to Oxfam? I had to say yes for my community. So very excited, dazed, and I can't wait to join, I'm sure, a fantastic team of people at Oxfam, both volunteers, people who actually run the retail shops, people who also work in Bangladesh and other parts of the world to create what we talk about in terms of systemic change, right? So Oxfam's work is less about aid and more about creating the conditions for change for citizens in their own countries to ask for better services for themselves, which is very exciting because I'm not as excited with traditional and quite old-fashioned notions of aid. I'm more excited about how you create the conditions for change for people to make a change for themselves, which is what Oxfam's about. So I can't wait.
Inshallah. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Of course, best of luck with everything. You're going to be amazing as always, and of course, you're paving the way for us British Bangladeshis. So thank you so much for everything.
My pleasure. And I have to say, I can't wait to see how your career goes because I'm looking at an amazing young person. If I had half the intelligence or the charisma or the confidence that you have, well, I'd be going a lot further. So good luck.
That really means a lot.